I'm going to start this morning by giving you a few names. Kermit the Frog, Winnie the Pooh, Oscar the Grouch, Sonic the Hedgehog. And what do all of these characters have in common? And the answer is they all share a middle name with our patron saint, John the Baptist. That joke kind of fell flat. The is what I was getting at. The definite article, the. No, not good. Today we celebrate our patron, John the Baptist. And I think John the Baptist is a pretty good patron saint for any parish to have. I think John the Baptist is probably just about as good as it gets, because John the Baptist is the kind of guy that we can look to as an example of how to get people excited for Jesus. That's what John did, is he got people excited for Jesus. Now we have stories of John the Baptist that appear in all four of our Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And that's not true of all of the New Testament saints. We don't have all of them named in every Gospel, but John is named in all four Gospels. And the story of John's life is somewhat similar in all four accounts, right? There's a somewhat similar trajectory. Now, the passage that we heard this morning is a passage that tells us that John is related to Jesus in some way. The Gospel of Luke is the Gospel that tells us that Elizabeth is a relative of Mary. It doesn't say exactly how Mary and Elizabeth are related, but it says that they are relatives, which means that Jesus and John are relatives in some capacity. When I was a kid, I was taught that Jesus and John were cousins. And I think that cousin is a pretty appropriate term for their relationship, whatever that must have been. And you have to know that that comes from someone who was raised in a family where I have 100 first cousins. So whenever I go to Grandma's house, and it's still Grandma's house, even though Grandma and Grandpa both have passed away a number of years ago now, and my aunt lives there, right? It's still Grandma's house when I go home. It's still Grandma's house, right? And when I go to Grandma's house, if there is anyone there from age infancy through probably their mid-50s or even beyond, that person is my cousin. I'm pretty sure that whoever is in that house must be a cousin of mine. And I think cousin is a good enough word to explain the relationship between Jesus and John. And what's important is that kind of sets the tone for what we believe about John, that there's some kind of a familial relationship between Jesus and John. Now, it's important to remember that it is also the Gospel of Luke that gives us a pretty important piece of our Christian theology, which is that Jesus was born of the Virgin Mary. Only Luke's Gospel says that John and Jesus were cousins, right? But only Luke's Gospel tells us that Jesus was born of the Virgin Mary. So we have this important piece of the story that comes from the Gospel of Luke, and it shapes kind of what we have come to understand about this interesting person named John the Baptist. That's what we call him, John the Baptist. And in the story of his life, that is pretty consistent throughout all four Gospels, with the exception of his familial relationship to Jesus, we're told the story of this kind of weird guy who goes out and tells us that there's someone coming after me, and the one that I'm coming after, he's the one that you're really going to want to listen to, right? And as a matter of fact, I'm not even worthy to untie the thong of his sandals. So he's getting us ready. And that's pretty consistent in all four Gospels, is that this person gets us ready. And how does he do that? Well, he's John the Baptist, right? And that doesn't mean that he's some part of like a Southern Baptist convention, right? It's not like John the Baptist and Tim the Episcopalian and Susan the Catholic, right? It's not like an ecumenical council, right? He's John the Baptizer. So he goes out and spreads the message, and then he baptizes. And who does he baptize? Anybody who wants to be baptized. Now, I heard somebody say Jesus, and that is accurate. John baptized Jesus, right? But he also baptized a whole lot of people. Now, the baptism of John is a little different than the baptism that we celebrate in our font back here, right? It's a little different. Because through our baptism, we are made heirs of Jesus Christ, right? But there are also some similarities with this baptism, because the baptism of John was a baptism that brought you into a fellowship. You were on the in club if you were baptized by John. Right? And John baptized everybody. Everybody. Right? Everybody who asked for it. Now, there are stories of John baptizing the tax collectors. Right? So we know that John baptized Jesus, and he baptized tax collectors and everyone in between. Now, if there was somebody you did not want to be in the days of Jesus, it was a tax collector. Tax collectors were not looked upon very kindly. That was a job of somebody that you didn't really like too well, right? But John welcomed them. He welcomed the tax collectors just as much as he welcomed Jesus and everyone in between. So I think that's someone we want to look to, and I think that's someone that we do look to, right? As a parish, this parish does such a good job of following the example of John the Baptist. Now, first of all, we need to make sure that we know that we are Christians. So that means we are followers of Jesus. Right? We're followers of Jesus first and foremost. But our Anglican theology of the saints teaches us that the saints are people who live lives that we might want to try to be like. And so that means that we can look to people like our patron, like John, and we can say, you know what, I want to be like that guy. I want to be like him. I want to do what he did. Right? I want to be one who gets people excited about Jesus. I want to be someone who welcomes everyone to the table. I want to be someone who makes this place a place of welcome, and we want to do the work that gets people ready for the coming of Jesus. Right? And so those are some traits that I noticed that this parish already lived into long before I got here. Right? So you are to be commended for following John the Baptist. Because when I come here, I get excited about Jesus. And that's because of you. That's because you get me excited about Jesus. You follow the example of John the Baptist. And you welcome everyone to be among you and to worship with you and to celebrate with you. And that is people that might agree with you, people that might disagree with you, everywhere in between, right? We all share the holy meal together. We are all part of the same fellowship. So I think we're off to a really good start when it comes to following John the Baptist. Now, another thing that we can do when we think about John the Baptist is we can acknowledge, like I said earlier, he was kind of a weird guy. And when I say that, well, he was, wasn't he? He was kind of weird. Right? He was the kind of guy who wore, according to the scriptures, he wore camel hair. Right? Now, how many of us have felt camel hair? How many of us have felt camel hair? Right? It's not exactly comfortable. Right? It's not like it's sheep's wool or alpaca wool or something like that. It's not like cotton. It's kind of scratchy and not very comfortable. Right? So first of all, we're told what he wore is kind of weird. Right? And second of all, we're told that he ate locusts and honey. Now, the honey I can go for. Honey's not so bad, but locusts. A locust is like a big grasshopper. Now we could look and we could say, you know what? In times of, when there's times of famine, a locust might be a good source of protein, right? But it doesn't say that he ate locusts as necessary. It says that was what he chose to eat was a locust. So, and I picture, it doesn't say this, but I picture him dipping the locust in a jar of honey, But he's kind of a weird guy, and the reason we know that is because the scriptures tell us so. Like if those weren't true, they wouldn't have felt compelled to put that in, because they didn't tell us what other people wore or what other people ate. Right? They told us what John wore and what John ate. So that tells us that the people who wrote the scriptures thought that these were a little out there. Right? And so what we can do is we can look to John as an example of how to overcome things when we kind of feel like outsiders. Because John was kind of an outsider. Now, there have been many, many times in my life when I have felt like an outsider. And I'm guessing that is not unique to me. I'm guessing that I'm not the only one here who has felt like an outsider from time to time. Right? I'll give you some examples of what I mean. Ever since I was a little kid, I've had a fascination with Converse All-Stars Chuck Taylor sneakers, right? The high tops especially. So I'm wearing some right now, right? And when I was a kid, I always thought it was really cool and fun to wear two different colored high tops, two different colors. So I'd wear, like a red one and a green one, and I thought it was cool. I thought it was fun. I thought that was a way I could express myself, right? So I'd show up at school, and then sometimes people would make fun of me for wearing two different shoes, for expressing myself in a way that I felt like I could express myself. Made me feel like an outsider. Now, if I'm honest, it was probably just one or two people that made fun of me, and probably the vast majority of people around me either didn't care or thought it was cool. Right? If I'm honest with myself, that's probably more accurately what happened. But it didn't feel like it at the time. It made me feel like an outsider. When those one or two voices made fun of me, it kind of made me feel like an outsider. And you know this about me, that I like to wear Hawaiian shirts. Right? And at times in my life, people have made fun of me for wearing the Hawaiian shirts. People have made me feel like an outsider for wearing a Hawaiian shirt. I like Hawaiian shirts. They're comfortable, first of all, and I also like that they have lots of colors on them. Right? But people have made me feel like an outsider because they didn't agree with me wearing those Hawaiian shirts. Right? And again, probably most people at best don't care. Right? But a few voices made me feel kind of shameful that I liked these shirts that mean a lot to me. Another example, and this one you probably don't know about me, is that I have in each ear, I have 3 piercings. So a total of 6 earrings that at one time in my life I used to wear. And for years and years and years, I used to wear a total of 6 earrings every day. I've since stopped wearing them. I probably have grown up a little bit and realized, well, I don't really need to express myself in that way anymore. But I bet if I got an earring and put it in one of the piercings, I bet it's still there because I wore the earrings for years and years and years. And it was the same kind of thing. Like sometimes people would look at me and say, "Oh, that's cool. That guy has earrings." And other times people would say, "That guy's kind of weird. He's wearing earrings." Right? And the truth is, John was probably looked at and said, "Hey, this guy's pretty weird. This guy's pretty weird." But John did probably one of the most important things in Scripture, right? He got us ready for Jesus. And he's one of the few people that's written about in getting us ready for Jesus. Right? He gets us excited for Jesus. What's that noise? That's not Jesus getting ready to... I hope that... is it an airplane? It could be an airplane. It could be an airplane, right? But John gets us excited for Jesus. And so John gives us that example for how we can get excited for Jesus and how we can help share that message of excitement for Jesus. And we can look at ourselves, we can say, I feel kind of weird. I feel like I'm kind of an outsider. But you know what? John was an outsider and he did it. He did the work. He got us ready. Speaking of John, right? So we've got a John the Baptist fill-in here, right? Now, is this camel hair? This is probably not camel hair because it looks a little fluffy. Mountain sheep. Okay, mountain sheep. But we've got John the Baptist. We can look to John the Baptist and we can say, here's someone who kind of probably at one time felt the way I feel when I feel like an outsider, and yet he did one of the most important things in the history of our church. He spread the good news. He spread the message of the gospel of Jesus. And so we are Christians. We follow Jesus, but we can look to John as an example of how to do that. And so that's the end of my sermon for today. But one thing that you also know about me being an outsider is that I like to bring out liturgical toys whenever I can. And I can't think of a better reason to bring out a liturgical toy than the feast day of John the Baptizer, right? One that helps us remind ourselves of our baptism. Deacon Chuck, will you please help me as we get out our aspergillum, our sprinkling tools? and we will renew our own baptisms together. Did you bring your raincoats? It's kind of like remember the old Gallagher concerts, right? So we're going to come around. We're going to sprinkle you with holy water as we remember our baptisms, and we remember the patron saint of this place, Saint John the Baptist.